Hey artists! Today we're going to be learning about markers, so go ahead and grab your sketchbook and let's get started. Markers generally come in two different forms. They can have a water-based ink or an alcohol-based ink. Water-based markers will be ones like Crayola. They dry slow, often come in limited colors, can be reactivated with water, and don't cost a lot to buy. Alcohol markers, on the other hand, are ones like Sharpie. These are more likely to bleed through paper, but they also have more color options. They're waterproof and are a little bit more expensive. No matter what kind of marker you have, make sure you take care of them by putting the cap back on when you're done. It should sound like this. Awesome! You shouldn't get any dried out markers so long as you click your cap shut. Now, just like there are different kinds of marker inks, there are different kinds of marker tips too. And the three main ones that you might see are the bullet tip, the chisel tip, and the brush tip. The bullet tip kind of looks like a rounded triangle, which you can kind of see on Crayolas and basic Sharpies. Bullet tips are good for getting thin lines that are the same thickness all the way through. Really good for details. Chisel tips are something that you'll see more on alcohol markers or bigger Sharpies. They look like a rectangle that's been cut at an angle, and this tip is really good for filling in large areas with a lot of color. Brush tips look exactly like what it sounds like, a brush. This tip is a lot softer and is super flexible, which means you can get lots of different sizes of lines depending on how you hold it, or how hard you press. Just make sure you don't press too hard though, or you'll hurt the marker, and we wouldn't want that. When we start coloring with markers and we want to get an even layer of color, we want to make sure we don't scribble even though it can be fun. Instead, we can try using directional lines, meaning lines that move in the same direction next to each other. Or if you want more texture and movement, we can use a feathering technique where you use directional lines and flick your wrist at the end, so it looks a little lighter and a little fuzzy. Now let's experiment with blending using water-based and alcohol markers. I'll be doing two different tests so I can make observations and change my method if I need to. First up is our water-based Crayola marker. I'm using two colors that are similar so I can try and get a good blend. First, I put down a section of red using directional lines. Then I use yellow and start from the bottom to go up into the red. And I use my marker to try and move the ink around while it's wet. When I do this, the red ink gets on the yellow marker, and you might think it's ruined. But no, if we grab a piece of scrap paper, we can gently clean the tip of the marker until the ink is clean and yellow again. I think our first test went well, but next time I want to try leaving more room for light colors, since the yellow on my sketchbook kind of looks orange. Blending while the ink was wet was really helpful, so I'm going to try these in my next test to see if I improve. I'm making sure that I clean my marker when I'm done, and yes, I think we did better the second time. Now let's try our alcohol-based markers. I'll use the same colors that I did last time and try the same method. Use red and then add yellow and mix while wet. Now maybe you remembered and noticed as I tried blending, but alcohol markers do not stay wet on the page and don't mix like water markers. I think I can solve this problem by using colors that are even more similar, like dark blue and light blue. And this worked! I layered multiple times to darken and blend some areas better, and this also helped, so I made an extra note in my sketchbook. I filled up an entire page in my sketchbook, so I'm going to turn... Oh, look, there's a great observation on how alcohol markers bleed more than water-based markers. Now that we've learned a lot about markers, let's try and take everything we've learned and put it into a practice drawing. I did a quick sketch of a flower so I could have an opportunity to use lots of different colors. I started by using Crayola, but I decided I wanted to grow my knowledge of alcohol markers, so I switched partway through. You'll notice that I'm remembering to use similar colors and a feathering technique to blend colors. Those directional lines really help. I also layered more on the areas that I wanted to be darker. It's so cool to see all of my growth in using markers. I'll do a quick reflection before ending. Today I learned that layering more ink creates a darker color, and using similar colors to blend is super helpful to getting a smooth blend. I had a lot of fun learning about markers today, and I hope you learned something new too. Thank you so much for watching, keep creating, and I'll see you again next time.